pause, silence. Let's reconvene in person again, to reconnect, to tell our stories, to listen, to disarm ourselves of preconceived notions, to reframe, to reflect, to unplug. Welcome to #Unplugged22. Take a victory lap. High five a friend. This is your moment, our moment. Together, we unplug to connect again and remember why we started. Let's evaluate our community and our digital impact with quality conversations rooted in context. We're about real connections that translate into real-life action. Brought to you by Jam Lab Africa and the Civic Tech Innovation Network.
Hi everyone, welcome to CTIF. We are about to start the session, so I'll hand over to Trisha.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be sharing my screen. Thank you for joining us bright and early today. Okay, I'm just going to switch my video off so the internet's a bit better. Okay. So today we're talking about open source tools and about the world of open source. So I'm Trisha. I'm the Senior Data Product Manager at Code for Africa, and I manage what is called our Data Lab. We work with journalists all through Africa, and we produce data visualization projects and also data tools. I'm based in Durban, South Africa, and please do follow me on Twitter. My colleague Isaiah is joining us today all the way from Nairobi in Kenya, and he's a technologist at Code for Africa, and he enjoys coding in Python. So a bit about Code for Africa. Code for Africa is the continent's largest civic technology network of open data and data journalism labs. So you've been joining the Unplugged session for a while now. So you probably already know what civic tech is, but we often get asked, what is civic tech and what does Code for Africa do? So we use data and technology to produce data tools that is now used to help solve problems and technology to help solve problems. We have close to 100 full-time staff in about 21 African countries. We also work with data analysts, technologists, designers distributed all through Africa and also some in Europe. In our network, we have a Data community. So this is a community for data scientists, data journalists, designers, and this is women only. Then we have African Drone, which is a network of civic drone operators. We have Census Africa, which is a team that deploys air quality and water quality sensors and then collects data based off that. Our PESU check team is our fact-checking unit, and they're based in 13 different countries. And then our iLab team does forensic analysis, such as social media analysis. So we often get asked who funds Code for Africa. So since we cross-cut multiple sectors, we get funded by multiple organizations. So this is media organizations, tech organizations, governments, and other large institutions. Code for Africa forms a connective tissue. And when I say this, what I mean is that we connect the larger international organizations with the smaller local organizations on ground. So, what we do is we help the international organizations have a much more localized impact by involving smaller local organizations. We have more than 100 projects in our portfolio. In this example is in Tanzania, we ran a data journalism and data graffiti project. So we underwrote data journalism grants on child abuse, domestic violence, and we also built a Facebook bot. And what the data graffiti did is it pointed people towards the Facebook bot to report and get information on abuse. Okay, so what are we covering today? We're going to be looking a bit into open source, an introduction into it. And then we're going to look at some of CFA's projects, which is Open Africa, Gender Gap, and PESU. Okay, open source. Let's understand some of the basics. So what is open source? So it's something that can modify, share because its design is publicly accessible, meaning anyone can access it. So I know this talk was requested, and so open source is probably a big topic out there, and open source software is also quite big. So open source software is software with source code that anyone can inspect, modify, and enhance. So remember that you get proprietary software and then you get open source software. Proprietary software you have to pay for, and open source is free. So to make something open source, it has to follow 10 different criteria. And I went to the open source initiative and I pulled out these 10 criteria. We're not going to go too much into detail. I'm just going to read out the list. I've added in the link to go to the open source initiative, and I'll be sharing these slides and you can take a look at them later. So firstly, it needs to be a free redistribution, like I said, not proprietary software. The source code needs to be made available, derived works. Number 4, integrity of author's source code, no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against fields of endeavor, distribution of license. License must not be specific to a product. License must not restrict other software. License must be technology neutral. All right. So if you want more details, you can go to the open source initiative. Okay. Now, GitHub. You may have heard about GitHub if you're a technologist, or if you haven't, GitHub is a content management system for open source projects. So what developers go up there, they go and they create an organization, they go and set up their profiles, and they upload their source code. And from there, people from around the world can go and look at their source code in what is called repositories, and they can actually what is called fork it and replicate the project and adapt it for their local context. It's very widely used. As you can see, there's about over 83 million developers and over 4 million organizations. So I've also added a link to Code for Africa's GitHub account, and you can fork any of our projects. Code for Africa is an open data organization. All our projects are open source, and you can replicate them in any country. So the first project I'm going to take you through is Gender Gap Africa. And remember, it's open source. And I've added the link to the GitHub that you can fork this and maybe replicate this somewhere else or play around with the code. Okay, so we're going to go to Gender Gap Africa. So this was created some years ago. and it's recently been updated with the latest 2022 data. The data comes from the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report. So I'm going to show you how the tool works. We're going to click on it. It shows us this tool measures the income inequalities between male and female across the different African countries. So we're going to click on calculate, and then I'm going to select the country I'm from. I'm going to scroll all the way down to South Africa, and I'm going to go to next. I'm going to select my gender, which is female, and I'm going to click on next. And then I'm going to click on how much do I make per month. So let me just click in 3,000, for example. Okay. And it picks up my currency as the rand. It says, as a woman, you make 3,000 rand. If you're a man, you'd make 1,392 rand more per month. And then it visualizes this for you. So as a woman, if I'm making 3,000 rand, a man would actually be making 4,392 rand. And here you have the difference. So in South Africa, a man earns on average 46% more than a woman. I know a lot of the time this data is very controversial. So how the World Economic Forum collects this data is that they don't compare specific careers or job titles, but rather just do an estimate as a whole. And then you can see how South Africa compares with other countries. Okay, so let's just scroll down. We have Burundi at the top where there's equal pay. And South Africa is right almost 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a fourth last with the gender gap. So these values are now in dollars. And you can actually see the difference. Mauritius has the biggest gender gap. Burundi and Liberia are quite good with no gender gap. And yeah, South Africa, we really need to pick it up in terms of the inequality in pay. And what this sort of tool does is that it brings about conversation. Journalists can take this sort of data and start writing articles. Policies can be reformed. Companies can start looking at their records and see, do they actually have a gender gap? It's about bringing about conversation and policy change. Okay. Now, one of the open source software that was used to build gender gap is D3JS. So Azaya, my colleague technologist, can you run us through D3JS, please?
Yeah, sure. So if you can hear me, I'll just talk about it a little bit. So
Yes.
as you have seen that we already have like the data, for example, like the different amount of money that different people earn. So in order to be able like to show that data in the browser, there are different ways that we could do it. One of the ways is directly manipulating the DOM just using plain JavaScript. But that would take a lot of time, and that's where the power of open source kicks in. So with D3JS, different people have already faced like the same problems. So they are found like being able like to manipulate, for example, the browser DOM directly using JavaScript takes a lot of time, and it's very repetitive. So someone started creating a library, a JavaScript library, which is the D3JS, that makes the whole process easy. So we just read the values that we have, and then we can use the D3JS to plot the chart as you have seen. So basically, D3JS is a JavaScript library that helps in bringing data into life using like a HTML without having to go through all the struggle of having like to do all that work on your own. So let me see. Let me share a link to the site. So, and because it's open source, everyone can contribute into it, ask questions and all that. But yeah, so that is a short introduction to D3JS and how it works. It just basically helps in making it easier to plot, like to get data and then plot it in the user interface like we have just seen. Back to you, Tricia.
Okay, thanks, Isaiah. So the next project we're going to be looking at is Open Africa, and Open Africa is an open data portal. So during these talks, you may have come across open data portals, and I'm going to take you through Open Africa. Okay, so Open Africa is a volunteer-run open data portal. So Code for Africa built Open Africa, but anyone can go ahead and actually upload data. They just need to contact us. We'll create the organization and give them sets and search for a data set. So let's just scroll through and look at an interesting data set. Let's see. There's a lot of for rural water supply system. And Open Africa is about reusing and sharing data. So we actually had someone reach out to us from the Water and Sanitation Corporation. The person's name is Jin, and he reached out to us and said, okay, he has this data, he has vector tiles for rural water supply systems. Can we upload it? And he's given quite a good description saying this is an open data for rural water supply systems in the entire country of Rwanda, the data format, in which software you can use it in, etc. And from there, you can now download this data set and you can use it in any GIS software that you like. And you can now use it to create your maps, okay? Think about if you're a journalist, and if you're writing a story on water and access to water in Rwanda, you can create a map and map out the areas that have water supplies and the area that doesn't have, and you can write a story about that. If you're a technologist and if you're trying to solve some sort of problem, like there's again access to water, you can then see, okay, certain areas don't have access to water, and why is it that they don't? And how can we as technologists come up with a solution or a tool to help the government now identify these areas and to notify them, like, for example, if an area has a broken water supply system, okay? Then you can, the data is organized under the different organizations. So as we scrape data, we upload them according to the different organizations. So for example, if the data is from ACLED, we would then upload the data under the ACLED organization, which then makes it a bit more easier to find data. The data is then grouped as well. So if you want to look for data in a specific country, you can go under there and look for that data set. You also have data requests. So if you're looking for data, you can now add in a data request asking for a specific data set, and we will try and find that for you. So this is Open Africa, and Open Africa is also an open source project. Like I mentioned, all Code for Africa projects are open source, and it was built on an open source software called CCAN. Zaya, can you take us through CCAN?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think as Tricia has mentioned, we built on this on top of Tican, which has been used to build a lot of open source data management systems. So it's an open source product that runs on Python Flask. So Python itself is an open source project. Flask itself is a Python framework that is also open source. So as you can see, all these, the whole tool is built like from ground up using open source products or open source softwares, and that's why I think it's also like an open source software. So maybe just to say what we did, we built on top of this one by adding, some we build on top of it using Docker. So Sican itself just provides you with, for example, like the engine, allowing you, for example, to upload the documents, helps you with things like searching. So for us, we needed to build on top of that and add, for example, different extensions, customizing our UI. So basically what we did was just take these and then create our own separate version or separate a small branch of these, which is a very common thing in open source. So we do have our own GitHub version of the Sican, where the base engine is still Sican, but just give me a sec. I share that with you. So just a minute. So this is what we use. So we built on top of these. So some of the tools that we used were, like Docker. So this is what we use, for example, like for building the specific images that that lands the website. So for example, like when you visit the website, the Docker image is the one that has been deployed. Our own Docker image is the one that has been deployed, and that allows us, for example, like to not be fully like locked down by how Sican itself develops. So those are some of the reasons why we did that, and I think also like why some of the wins of like Sican. So yeah, maybe something else to also mention about Sican. Sican itself also depends on other open source projects. So for example, as you have said, like about searching the data. So they would have decided either to like build the whole searching functionality from scratch, but that would have been, taken a lot. So they used another an open source software called Sol for helping with the data searches, which makes it like extremely fast to perform the searches. So, and then lastly, one of the other major open source projects that they used was for the database. They used Postgres, which it's also the one that we use. So this one is what allows them, for example, like to store the data. For example, when you upload a document or you add an organization, the database, that Postgres database is the one that is used to store that information. Yeah, and then there are others, for example, like where do the documents go? So we do have Sican does have like a wide range of extensions, and they also allow you to develop your own extensions and share with the community. So for example, for us, when you upload, for example, a document, it gets stored, for example, in S3, but that is an extension that has already been built by the community. So basically, the whole site runs through open source, and yeah, you can be able like to see what happens to the data once you upload it, or everything is open to the public to see. So yeah, back to you, Trisha.
Thanks, Isaiah. So now we're going to look at a tool called PESU. PESU, we had just launched this tool earlier this year, and it has a bunch of interactive data visualizations, and it's based in Kenya. Okay, let me do a live demo of PESU. Okay, so this is the homepage of PESU, and we have the map of Kenya, and data is currently available for 8 counties, because for our launch, we've focused on just 8 counties in Kenya. So it's quite interactive. I'm just going to call out some open source software right now. So later on, when Isaiah speaks about it, you'd know. So this map is actually built by Leaflet, and Isaiah will speak about this a bit later. So you can see it's quite interactive. It highlights the areas that does have data. Okay. We have a how-to video. It explains how the site works. We have this interactive visualization that just gives us a brief sort of a summary of some of the data that we have and some of the data indicators that we have. We have an overview, which is just general county data, and revenue looks at the previous CIDP report. So I forgot to mention that on the site contains data from the CIDP report, which is the County Integrated Development Plan. So every 4 years, the county develops a plan on how they will now run the county. And the period we have the data for uploaded here is for we have the how they spent the money in 2014 2017, and we have the current development of from 2018 to 2022. Okay, the aim of the site is to able to make the government more accountable for what they have promised and have they kept up to their promises. Then we're going to look at the development. So we're going to look at the budgets that were proposed for the years 2018 to 2022. And then we're going to look at how they plan to implement these indicators that they have suggested. And then we'll take a look at the monitoring and evaluation framework that they have suggested. So those are the 5 different indicators that the data that we have data for. And we also have data on the census, and we've also just uploaded data on the elections that took place in August this year. We also have stories, and you can read more about the stories that use data and also just data around the project. Okay, this PESU was launched as part of a larger project that was with 14 different radio stations across the 8 different counties in Kenya. And it ran for about 1.5 years producing stories, and it's still in implementation. Okay, and then you can check out some of our other tools like our Promise Tracker, our PESU Check, Tax Lock, and Debunk Blot. Okay, so we can look at some of in the data section. What we have is the documents that were used in the website. So, for example, any important speeches, etc., anything that is important to you, the raw data sets is also something that you can find useful here in this section. Then we have the story section of the website. And this shows us the different stories, and you can click on them and have a read. What the journalists who took part in this project, they now had stories that they wrote about. And then we have a how it works section that shows us how the site works and tutorials, etc. Okay, and the methodology, which is quite important. All right, so let's explore and let's look at some of the data. So this is the Kenya section. Let's go into a county to look at some of the county reports. Okay, so I'm going to click on Nairobi. Okay, and this opens up the rich data section. And this now shows me all the data sets they have. We have metrics. So for example, the metrics show us, for example, individuals below the poverty line. So it's 21.8% of individuals are below the poverty line. On the left, you have your menu bar that now shows you all the data. All the different topics that you have data for. So you have overview, revenue, implement, summary. If you click on it, it further divides it under administrative and political, agriculture, health, education, etc. Okay, I just want to scroll down. This is the county's electoral wards, number of registered voters by constituencies. I want to look at the latest election results. So we have population living on streets. So the number of votes cast for the presidential election in the year 2022. So you can see the votes, how it went in Nairobi County, who actually won and who came fourth place. Okay. And then you can have a look at the number of registered voters, valid votes, and actually rejected ballots. So you can, from this, you can see there's a huge difference between the number of registered voters and how many actually voted. So that's something for the country to now, or the county to investigate, is why we have so many registered voters, by why aren't people casting their votes? It would be very interesting for you as a journalist to go ahead and write a story about why aren't we getting people to vote? They're registered, but why aren't they actually going to cast their vote? Very interesting story in there. And then the last one is quite interesting as well. The number of members of parliament according to male and female. So as you can see, that there is still quite a large gender gap between 2013 and 2022. So in 2013, there was 0 female members of parliament in Nairobi. In 2017, that moved to 1. And in 2022, it's still 1. So, and whereas for males, there's 16 and 16 in 2017. So it's also an interesting story to write about, the gender gap. Okay, so let's look at what we can do with this chart. We can now download this data, and we can download it in a PNG, and then we can upload that, or an SVG, which is now a file that you can edit. And you can also download your data as a CSV or an XLS or a JSON. Okay, and then you can share this data visualization. You can share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, email, or you just have the option to copy the link and share it, maybe however you want to share it, on Slack or wherever it may be. And then you have the option of embedding this visualization. You click on this and you copy the code and you embed it into your story, and you'll have this visualization where you talk about why is there more registered voters and not many people casting their votes. Okay. Then what we also have is we have the pin and compare feature. So I'm going to select a county to compare with, and let's just compare with Homa Bay. Okay. It's loading. This is meant to give me a side-by-side comparison. Okay, let's look again at the elections. Yeah. So again, you can see the second candidate, Homa Bay is in red and Nairobi is in blue. So Ruto William, you can see he had a large amount of votes in Nairobi, but a very small amount of votes in Homa Bay. Odinga had majority of the votes in Homa Bay. So that's something you can see right away by the side-by-side comparison. Again, you can shade in this view. And then also the population comes into consideration, because if you look at the scale, registered voters, you have 2.4 million. over 2.4 million. And here in Homer Bay, you have 51.5, just over 551 K of registered voters. And then you can see how it goes according to the members of parliament. You can see they have much more. They have 3 females as members of parliament, as compared to Nairobi, just has 1 female as a member of parliament, which is quite good. You can actually see this difference in the gender gap, which is quite good. Homo Bay is doing much better there. Okay, so that's PESA Year 2. Like I said, it's been just launched a few months ago. And we're going to look through the different open source tools that we use to build it. Okay, so the backend was built on WasiMap NG, so WasiMap Next Generation. And Isaiah, you can talk about WasiMap.
Okay, thanks. Let me just start with sharing a link to it. There it is. So it's an open source project that powers different sites. For example, it powers what we just showed you, the PESA A2. So it's built using Python and Django. Django is also Python framework. So that is what, for example, like powers it, and it's the one, for example, like allows us, for example, to upload the different data sets, create, for example, different geographies. So when you do that, we use, for example, another open source project called Sentry for processing like some of those tasks. Celery, sorry, we use Celery, which is also an open source project for processing, for example, like the uploads, or when you upload, for example, let's say a data set. So that is what is used, so which is also fully open source. Yeah, and then maybe just to mention something else that is used on this project is Docker. So that is the same one I think we have seen in another project. So it's a very popular open source software. So we use that, for example, to build the our own software that we use, for example, like to deploy on a server. So we use that, and then we use another open source software, Doku, which is helps us, for example, in the auto deployment of or learning the backend itself. So we have hosted, for example, a server on Amazon, and then in the server we run an open source project called Doku, which is also used by the WasiMap. And then that is where, for example, we run it from. So in addition to that, I think just to mention some of the things that they have done and the good thing about open source. So for us, I think we had, for example, some specific requirements, and since we had made a fork from the WasiMap new generation GitHub repo, we were able to customize it. For example, I think for us, we needed to add some metadata to the key metrics. So for example, you go to a certain location, let's say Nairobi, you can be able like to see some more metadata. For example, like a URL to where, for example, the data was received. The WasiMap new generation itself doesn't have that. So the fact that it's open source, we could be able like to pick it and make our own modifications. So that was those are some of the changes that we made to the backend. Back to you, Tricia.
Thanks, Isaiah. So our front end, we used Next.js React. Isaiah, would you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So these, yeah. So for the front end, we use Next.js, so which is a JavaScript framework that is built on top of React. So React is like a popular front end library that is used to make web or front end applications. So we used it one because I think it was also used by the WasiMap NG people, and for us, I think it provided a better, developers experience. And one of the things that we really utilized was the server-side rendering that it gives us. So that allows us, for example, when you request or when you go to that website, uh, you get the whole website already pre-rendered. It doesn't happen, for example, on your device, mobile or laptop, which makes the site feel very smooth, doesn't lag. I would say like generates kinda fast. So yeah, that is what we use for the front end, and some of the reasons we decided to go with it. Back to you, Trish.
Okay, thanks, Zaya. Okay, and then for our visualizations, we use Vega. So this is quite interesting, Azaya, and I want you to take us through it because I mean there's so many different tools to use for visualization. So why did we use Vega?
Yeah, thanks for that. So, we decided to use Vega because of how it allows us, for example, how it's declarative, right? So for example, like for creating and sharing these visualization designs, I think it was very easy. For example, even the way you have just shown, like how you can share uh like an image. So we have like a data in JSON format, and it was very easy to integrate with Vega. And actually, we didn't like directly just use Vega. We tried to use a library on top of it, a React library that helps us with that. It's called React Vega. So with that, it's just easy. Like you just provide it with the data and tell it what type, for example, of chart that you want, and it helps like in that visualization. It's easier and it's more interactive as compared to other tools, maybe like D3. I think this one was easier for this type of project, and the amount of data that we needed like to show. So yeah, back to you.
Hi, Trisha and Isaiah. Just wanted to pop in and ask if you guys have time for some questions. There are some in the
Yes,
question
yes,
section.
yes, yes.
All right.
Yeah, we almost done. Yeah. Thanks, Azaya, for that. And our last open source tool that we used for PESU was for our maps, and this was a tool called Leaflet. Azaya.
Yeah, so yes, this was actually a really nice tool. So it does help all, as you can see, it's a JavaScript open source library that we use. So this one is what allows us, for example, to uh, do for things like the scaling of the map, the interactivity of the map. So and it's very lightweight, so it's not like very big, and doesn't have an impact on the site like loading it. The library is actually very small, so those are some of the reasons that we decided to go with it. And also it's very mobile friendly for the interactivity with the maps. So yeah, that is the reason that we decided to use it. And it's fully open source. You can see it, you can uh, contribute to it. Yeah, back to you, Sushi.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's the end of our demo. We're gonna go into questions, and before we go into questions, I just want to say, please tweet at Code for Africa. We have an academy that has online courses. on data journalism and data literacy, fact checking, and drone journalism. So please check it out. It's academy.africa. And if you'd like to join our Slack, here's the link as well. And I'll be sharing the presentation link in the chat now. Okay, thanks so much for listening to us.
First question is on the screen. I think that can go to Tricia or Isaiah. Either of you can answer it.
Okay, cool. I'll read this. Hi, my name is Mahiana. Hi, Mahiana. And I'm about to lead a civic tech initiative in Madagascar about civic engagement. Does Code for Africa lead activities or have a partner in Madagascar? I'm not sure if we do have a partner in Madagascar at the moment, but we'd be happy to get in touch with you and see how we can possibly work together. I'll drop my email in here and you can connect with me. Isaiah, can you take this question?
Yeah. So I think some of them would be, the risk of so let's say like so if there's a vulnerability in an open source software, of course it will be known to everyone, and now it depends on how soon you can fix it, right? Because everyone can be able like to know that, for example, Django has these security bug, and if you fail to update, for example, to the latest, then you can be attacked, right? So yeah, that is one of the major issues. You need like to keep pace with the bugs and vulnerabilities that are released every time. Does hope that answers.
It does. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? If there's no other questions, I will take advantage of my role here as host and ask another question, if that's all right. So I guess, Tricia, I'm curious, as the biggest civic tech organization in Africa, how much of your work is open source?
So all of our work is open source, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. Unless we do have specific clients that request private work, but that's very rare. But yeah, majority of the time it is open source.
All right. And the civic tech community, the wider community, is it taking advantage of the open source tools that you're putting out there? In that, are they reusing the tools that you're creating?
That will be a question for Isaiah because he'd have a better handle on the GitHub and the activities on our GitHub.
So yes, we do see some forks on our repos. So we see people forking our repos, which means they are interested. We see them, doing stars on the repo, which means they are interested, and they are. Once you create like your own fork, it means you are making something of what we have. So yes.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions before we go? Let's check. I think there's another. Here's another question for you, Tricia.
Yes, so we often try to partner with local governments, and we always, whenever we start these activities, we try to get partnerships done with them. Oftentimes, they're unsuccessful because there's a lot of red tape around, but we always want to build, because the whole idea of civic tech is to work with government and try and make information and data available to the public for decision making. So we do inform them and try to form partnerships. Some of the times we do get partnerships, some of the times we don't get partnerships, but it's something that we always want to consider. We always want to do it with the backing of a government partner.
Awesome. Sounds great. Do we have any other questions? No. All right. So just to put my camera on a little bit before we go. Hi, everyone. Just to end the session and say thank you for joining us, and thank you, Tricia, for all that presentation and showing us the work that you do. So for the next session, we have a couple of sessions lined up for today. So the day is not done yet. So please do continue to join us. At the hour at 10 a.m., we have a fundies roundtable. So please do join us for that one. We have at 11:30, we have our deep dive, our second deep dive. And in the afternoon, we have a funders roundtable. So you can see there's a theme there. We've selected two sessions that complement each other. We have a fundies roundtable in the morning and a funders roundtable in the afternoon. So if you want to hear what the other civic tech organizations are saying or what the funders are saying, please do join us at 10 and at 2 p.m. this afternoon. And I think that's it. Yasmin will play us with a song, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much to everyone, and have a good day.
All right, cheers, bye.
Who's gonna